Hello, Dwane.
Hello, Dan.
Good to see you.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, so we got Dwane McFerrin here again, Senior Vice President of Med Solutions for SMS. I'm Dan Trumbley. And seems like every time we get together to talk about this stuff, we always talk about the same thing, change, right?
There's been a lot of change just in a couple of months. Dramatic change that affects agents, consumers, carriers. Even an election year is affected by all the things that are happening in our space right now.
Yeah, we were just talking before we started here about we're getting so close to AEP now. We're like 60 days out, and it feels like the ground is still shifting beneath our feet. You know, just every week something new comes out. So I think we were even thinking about doing a video on a different topic as we were planning for this, but so much has happened. We just decided we just need to get another, update out to the agents to talk about some of the latest things.
Well, what's really important is that agents have good information, because they're going to need to provide advice to their clients. So staying abreast of change and being informed and having the right information is really one of the purposes of today's webinar.
Yeah. So I think we'll just start by talking about maybe a little bit of a high-level recap, level set of some of the major issues we've all been dealing with and talking about this year. So what are some of the high-level updates on some of these things?
Well, let's just take a look at a few of those. So the CMS, that was big news, right? July 3rd, they came in, the final rule was put on a stay order by a judge in Texas. So essentially business back to usual from a compensation standpoint. The $100 extra to the agent, but then the agent takes on all the fees. That is put on stay. The FMO compensation was also put on stay. So to some extent, you could say back to more of a normal environment on compensation. We had the Inflation Reduction Act, and all of the implications of the Inflation Reduction Act are pretty dramatic. Even though some of them have been subsided a little bit, there's still a lot of change on the Inflation Reduction Act. And you could argue we may not be reducing inflation at all, and we'll talk a little later about how we're actually adding to the federal deficit in a big way. Medicare supplement, if you're selling that plan, you know that a lot of carriers are having rate increases and substantial rate increases that affect affordability for some consumers, and that seems to continue ever since the pandemic ended. Morbidity has stayed at a high level, hasn't come back down yet. You've seen some players exit the market, but it definitely a lot of things happening. And on top of that, a lot of states are adopting birthday rule. And with that guarantee issue comes along, that impacts premiums, it affects commissions, and the viability of some Medicare supplement plans. So no shortage of drama on the Medicare supplement side. And then Medicare Advantage is even more, right? We've got increased morbidity. You have the Inflation Reduction Act that's affecting it. You've got prior authorization, you've got smoothing of benefits. There's a whole bevy of change that's affecting Medicare Advantage. We're expecting plan exits and a lot of drama this coming AEP.
Yeah, so that's just the high level, right? But then even if you zoom in another level, there's all these headlines and changes with providers and insurance companies and plans and everything. So, we probably don't need to talk about all these in detail, but is there kind of a theme or a thread you would weave between some of these updates?
I would say the theme would be this is a year of disruption. And with disruption comes opportunity, but also requires that agents rewrite a lot of their book of business. You can't afford to ignore and just focus on new business. And if you don't get off to an early start, you may never get to new business. You may be spending your entire AEP rewriting your coverages out of necessity. So it's important for an agent to get an early start here in the August and September. Don't wait until October 1st. There's too much work that needs to be done. So here are a few things that have happened, just in recent months. Clear Spring and Mutual of Omaha pulled out of the PDP market. 2 mega call centers, are affected with change. Prudential decided they didn't want to be in the Medicare business anymore, and so Assurance IQ, which is owned by Prudential, they're out. eTeleQuote is being divested by Primerica, so another major call center that's affected. We have a couple of med sup companies that have exited the market, Lumico, Ellipse, and also US Fire. We've seen some things happening even on the retail side where A year ago, we were talking about vertical integration, how a carrier and a provider and everything under one shop, if you will. And now that seems to have somewhat fallen apart, and we're seeing that everything's going back to its original silos. Maybe not entirely, but it seems to be a direction. We have acquisition going on with HCSC, which most people will think of it as Blue Cross of Illinois, Blue Cross of Texas, and a couple of other states. They're acquiring Cigna's Medicare book. And probably most importantly for everyone on this call is the major carriers are all reporting investor issues or in terms of margin and profitability. We've seen some things come across that would indicate, I think just today it was $2 billion of cuts with CVS. Humana is reporting that they have to make changes just to affect the margin that they're really trying to achieve for investors. So carriers are under a challenge with higher morbidity, less reimbursement rates than what they were projected, and they're trying to achieve more profitability. So even if you didn't have the Inflation Reduction Act, you didn't have the CMS final rule, morbidity and reimbursement rates alone are affecting the carriers and therefore the plans that agents will be representing for 2025.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so lots of big market forces at play, demographic things, regulations, but probably the thing we've spent the most time talking about, this summer has probably been the Inflation Reduction Act, because it does have such profound impact on the plans agents are going to sell and the plans that their clients have currently. So we're going to do a little bit of a recap maybe on the Inflation Reduction Act to level set there, because there's some big news, coming in response to that and some of the changes that's caused. So maybe just for people that haven't seen our previous videos, what is the Inflation Reduction Act and why is it so important to the agents and their clients right now?
Well, it's profound change. The intent by the government was to put the pharmacies, the product manufacturers, shift cost to those manufacturers, and at the same time push risk onto the insurance companies. And it was supposed to be like break even for the federal government. The Congressional Budget Office that went through the Inflation Reduction Act, the whole intent was to support the program, but not necessarily to increase the subsidies required by the federal government. Well, that didn't exactly work out that way, and we'll cover that in a moment. But so the Inflation Reduction Act, it was intended to put a cap on the out-of-pocket costs of a consumer at $2,000. Well, then that has an implication on product. And so a lot of this is unintended consequences that agents are becoming aware of, but your clients don't really know yet. So how you educate your clients without scaring them is going to be a key objective for every agent in the field. The whole idea that it would be shifting costs to the carrier instead of shifting the cost to the federal government, you could say that probably failed, and we'll cover that more. Here's the bid that's gone out for premium increases. Is the bids came in really, really high, and CMS looked at it and they blinked. They said, we can't go out in an election year with those types of premium increases, so the subsidies have been changed. We think prior authorization is going to be a big factor. Reducing from 14 days to 7 days is a really good thing for consumers. That's been one of the negatives about Medicare Advantage is it seems like every claim is, being delayed by prior authorization, and so some consumer protection there. The extra benefits, I'm expecting that those are going to be watered down. And mid-year, the carrier is going to be required to communicate to the consumer how much extra benefits remain on their flex card or whatever extra benefits that they have. We're expecting a lot of formulary changes on Part D just for carriers to try to absorb this new risk. And then there's a new element called smoothing provision, where once the consumer signs up, I think they have to sign up through the carrier, not through the pharmacy, but once they sign up for it, their deductible and their drug costs can be smoothed over or paid over through the course of the year, as opposed to all in January. So a really good consumer benefit, however, a new risk for a carrier. What if a consumer doesn't pay that money to the carrier? How does that affect pricing? How does that affect the relationship between a carrier and the consumer if they're trying to collect on money that's owed? So a new risk, but also goes into pricing a product. So a lot of change. with the Inflation Reduction Act, and with that comes tremendous challenge in whether a carrier even wants to stay in the business. And you can bet a lot of carriers really gave that heavy consideration.
Yeah, and so when you look at some of the things up here, like pretty huge premium increases, formulary changes, these are direct impacts on agents' clients. And so we've really been trying to educate agents, make sure they're aware of these changes coming so that then they can turn and educate their clients. So speaking of educating their clients, we really recognize the importance. We've had a lot of agents reaching out to us, like, what should I say to my clients? I need to be getting in front of my clients on this topic now. So we actually have a new collection of agent marketing materials developed specifically on some of the changes coming to the industry, on the Inflation Reduction Act. And you talked about the need to educate, no scare tactics, and really obviously can't talk about plan benefits yet. So it's really just educating on the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the unintended consequences and some of the things that clients should be looking out for.
Whether you're doing one-on-one conversations with a consumer or you're doing Medicare workshops, it's important that we be good educators, helping people understand what kind of change is happening. When you see that kind of subsidy coming through, there's going to be a lot of noise in the industry. Just today, Wall Street Journal published an article that was really critical of the administration for kind of throwing in a new wrinkle that would increase the cost to the federal government and in an election year. So providing good, unbiased information to consumers without disclosing plan benefits before October 1st, that's been something really critical. And so we do have a supply of material, whether you're doing a workshop, you're doing social media, you want to do something in print, or an advertisement, or you want to do a postcard. We have a supply of material in our brand folder that would allow you to be in compliance, but yet still do the good job of educating the consumer of change. And I think this year we'll see more change than we've ever seen since Medicare Advantage and Part D came about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these materials are available now for SMS contracted agents. We have the link on the screen. It's kind of a long link, so we also have the QR code there. You can scan that with your phone, and you will need to log into our website to access this stuff. We're really trying to make this exclusively available to our agents, but we do have a nice collection of materials for people to use.
A job well done and definitely needed, because this is a point where an agent can't really start making their own material without running the risk of it being out of compliance. So encourage people to use what we've developed, and it's good stuff, good material.
Yeah, definitely.
Now let's talk a little bit about just the politics, and you could look at this premium stabilization program that was just announced in two ways. You can look at it cynically and say, where did this bailout come from? This $15 of extra subsidy that was thrown into the program to lower premiums. You could look at that as a political ploy, by the administration to stay away from bad news. And you could also look at it as, boy, am I glad that we had that extra subsidy, because my clients were going to be adversely affected in a big way, and maybe they won't be as negatively impacted as before. So regardless of which side you're on, it's change. And with change, we have to communicate the change and how it affects people. And so the bids that came in, it's really part of a formula when carriers are submitting bids. When they submitted their bids in the past, it was so much smaller, and $29. But this year, just the formula alone led the bid to be $142. And the premium stabilization demonstration has added another $15. So you have $159.67 per month that has been added to really the government subsidy. And so the whole intent of the Inflation Reduction Act was to shift the cost to the carriers and or the manufacturers, and here's the government coming in and saying, we're going to provide a lot more subsidy. Now there's some hooks to it that they want to have, and we can look at that on the next slide. Yeah, they want to keep the premium from being too high. So they're asking if you're going to participate as a carrier, no more than a $35 increase in premium year over year is part of that expectation. With that, the carrier gets $15 more of subsidy per month. And the big plum, if you will, the big prize for the carrier is the risk corridor. the carriers aren't taking all that risk after all. So it kind of defies the legislation, and it's like going around the legislation with a demonstration project by CMS. In an election year, I can understand why. Keep in mind, the Medicare Advantage plans aren't necessarily going to be a big benefactor of this. This is really the standalone Part D plans that this affects. And we're still uncertain on commissions. We've had a couple of carriers say we're not going to pay new business or we're not going to pay renewal. Still trying to get that settled. They had until August 5th to decide if they were going to participate or not. I'm assuming that if they're participating, and I think most carriers, if not all, will, I'm expecting some commission relief as a result because of the extra subsidies, but we don't have that confirmed as of this time. But we expect to hear shortly if a couple of carriers that maybe put themselves on the sideline to not being able to pay new business commissions, if they actually will. So a lot of moving parts,
Right.
a lot of change, and it isn't fully settled,
Right.
at least not yet.
Still not settled yet.
Right.
So what plans does this apply to? Is it all Part D plans? Is the subsidy only available to the basic plans?
My understanding is it applies to all of the Part D plans, not just the basic plan.
Okay.
Right?
Very good. And so, yeah, you kind of alluded to, I think the big question when everybody sees the big premium increases, the Inflation Reduction Act, we all wonder, are there going to be commissions on standalone Part D? You're saying we don't know yet.
Several national carriers have indicated they are paying commissions, new business or renewal. There's a couple of carriers that write a lot of Part D that we're waiting to get confirmation from. We just don't have it today.
So with all that in mind, I mentioned earlier 60 days out from AEP roughly. What should agents be thinking about right now?
Well, Part D news won't be probably as bad as what we all feared earlier this summer. Medicare Advantage is still affected in a big way, and we should expect to see a fair number of plan exits and or the need to rewrite. You may see a plan exit, but then another plan is available by the very same carrier. But nevertheless, that'll take time to rewrite. And so I think a lot of letters will go out. Those ANOC letters will go out this fall. And a lot of consumers are going to see that their Part D plan is disrupted or their Medicare Advantage plan is disrupted. So now is a really good time to start collecting all that drug information so that you're ready. If you're waiting until October 1st, I'm worried that you might get run over. And this would be a really good time to figure out ways to save valuable time, collect information, and find self-service methods that you could apply to your business. So last year, we implemented or created the ability for a consumer to enter their own drugs and also to self-enroll. We found half of seniors would be willing to do that. That was without reminders. This year we'll have reminders in place. So we think that this is a year where consumers, instead of going to Medicare.gov and good luck to you, is use our tools, figure out how to apply self-service, especially for those plans that may not pay commission, and consumers can choose their own plan, but you remain agent of record. So this could be a year where technology is even more important than ever before. Now, saving time is key, but also leads are a big factor. This did not get put on a stay on the order that came from the judge. So still, consumers have to indicate that I want to talk to you, not I want to talk to somebody. So you think of like the Joe Namath commercials that we've experienced. Those went to multiple call centers, maybe all at once. And the consumer really never knew where any of them were going. Under the new regulations, first-party consent must be provided and the consumer knows who's going to call. So that affects call centers, it affects agents. Across our entire industry is affected with how you generate leads and where you buy your leads. Big change.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost gone under the radar a little bit with all the other high-profile, turmoil going on. Is a lot of people aren't talking about that factor.
You can bet the call centers are.
Yeah.
They buy a lot of leads. They manufacture or publish leads even for themselves. Agents are more likely to do Medicare workshops, collect referrals, work their existing book of business. So they're not major lead generation, entities. Maybe a newer agent would be, but it applies to all of us. And so make sure that your materials are compliant, and our compliance team can help with all that.
And we have the lead exchange where agents can come and get leads from trusted sources as well.
We have services where you make sure that your leads are trusted form, they're TCPA compliant, they do indeed meet all the requirements. And so I'd encourage you to explore that. But regardless of what source you use, you still are obligated to make sure that first party consent is there. And so make sure if you've got a proven piece from the past, get it in now and make sure that it's still an approved piece.
Yeah, so now is the time to be communicating with clients about some of these changes, starting to gather your client data. We'll talk about some of the means to do that in a little bit more detail, and then getting your marketing materials approved for compliance, right?
Right.
Start early.
Now, if you're out there and maybe you're using Connecture and you're seeing a new service that can collect information from the consumer and maybe an electronic scope, that's one at a time. And you also pay a premium for it too, over $50 a month, I believe. We have services in our tools where you don't pay anything and you can bulk email all of your clients. So very valuable service for self-service. So I'd encourage you to look at that. We have a disruption tool or report that will tell you who's of your book of business, what clients are affected. We have self-enrollment features that you have available to you. We've got single sign-on for multiple Medicare supplement carriers, so you're not logging into multiple carrier websites. We have 5 different enrollment methods. You look at other technology, maybe it would be one enrollment method. Well, is that really how the consumer wants to do business? So encourage you, if you're not using Lead Advantage Pro and Medicare Insurance Direct, look into them. Talk to your favorite marketer, get a demo. One of the things we're really excited about there is number 7 is integration with Agency Block, and how you may have the preferred CRM tool with drip marketing and phone recording and other features that you really like, but the quoting and enrollment and the time-saving features of LA Pro make it a perfect match. So we're really excited about that. Also, when you do move your data with SMS, we're not charging you to move your data. You can import it, you can export it. I think that's a real big advantage. And then last of all is the provider lookup, is making sure that your clients are indeed have the right provider in their market. And one of the features I like the most about our technology is, let's say there's a disruption with a given drug and you've got 1,000 clients in your book of business. You have the ability with our platform to go in and find those clients that have that drug, queue that up in a report for you and say, these are your priority calls. So we've seen that with insulin for disruption. Say Levemir last year was a drug. Well, an agent could find every client on that drug in a flash. Other systems, you'd have to look one record at a time, and it would take you forever to find it. So essentially, I don't know what those agents would do other than wait for the client to call. Here with our system, you have the ability to look that up quickly and to alert the client that, hey, there's a change, we should look at alternatives.
Yeah, one of the things I think we really pride ourselves on is really practical applications like that, because so many of the features in Lead Advantage Pro have come directly from agents saying, hey, it'd be really helpful if this tool did this. And then we actually built those things. And that's been happening for years and years. So the result we have now is a tool that does a lot of things that no other tools in the industry do, that have come directly from agents saying, this would really help my business, or I would save so much time if this tool did this. So,
and what's better is if you're doing business with senior market sales, there's no cost. And you get all the functionality that would rival anything that's available in the industry. So I'd like to say thank you to anyone that's doing business with senior market sales. Thanks for the business. And take advantage of the tools that we have available. You'll find that we are positioned well to help you this disruptive AEP, but only if you act. Encourage you, since you know that there's no cost other than you investigating and doing business with senior market sales. And thank you for the business that you have with our company.
Well, and maybe this is a good place to wrap up. So I'll thank you for, the education again. I feel like I always learn a lot whenever we get together for these, but do you have a final word for our agents on, what we've seen this summer, and maybe even looking ahead to AEP as we try to get through some of this change?
You have clients that get information from neighbors, and you shake your head saying, don't get your information about insurance from your neighbor, get it from me. Well, we have agents that go out on social media and then they're influenced by all these things that are false information or bad information. So talk to a trusted source, whether that be a carrier, your marketer at SMS, call me. But going out on social media and getting in a tizzy about credible group coverage, that was the drill in the last week or so, where there was fear mongering that everyone on a group plan that's over 65 would not have creditable coverage because of the Inflation Reduction Act, and just creating a little bit of a panic that is really unnecessary. On that issue, it could be a factor in 2026. It won't be a major factor in 2025, but talk to a trusted source, make sure you're getting good information because you're passing that on to your clients. But if you're relying on social media and some shock jock for information, God help you, it may not be the right information. So let's make sure that we're accurate, we're honest, we're trustworthy, and that you are indeed the professional agent that your clients rely on.
Perfect. Great way to sum it up, and we'll end there. But I thank everybody for spending a little bit of time with us, and we'll continue to try to bring more valuable information, whether it's more videos like this or some webinars or whatever in the future. But the one thing I guess we can count on is probably more change to come, more updates to come. So we'll come back to you guys with more information here soon.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.